Everybody, I'm Jackie. This is Michelle, and we are the Dating Dames version 2. Between the two of us, we've racked up 47 years of marriage, have raised kids who are now teenagers as well as adults, and post-divorce, we're diving back into the world of dating. We're here to share our stories, our lessons learned, and the many laughs we've had along the way, which really embody our mantra, which is it's not about him, it's all about you. And today we'll be kicking off with that topic, what it means to us, and what it can mean to you. Michelle, what is your take on it's not about him, it's all about you?
I think there's a lot of dating advice that goes on out there that
Yes.
is telling women, especially, what the things are that they should do to attract this
Yes.
man in their life. This
Absolutely.
perfect, the knight on the white horse or whoever it may
Yeah.
be. Um, and I think that for us at this age, we don't need that. That's not what we're not typically looking to be rescued. We're not looking for this, particular destination. Instead, we're
Yes.
focusing on the journey. And if you're focusing on the journey, then you're discovering yourself. You're figuring out
Yeah.
what you want as you go.
Yes.
And so to
Yes. Yes.
me that it's about you and we've talked about this before. I sometimes I think, oh, it's I don't want things to be about me. It's not all about me. That whole kind of thing where people get a little bit obsessed and are sort of self-absorbed. But in this
Yep.
situation, that's not what we're saying. We're saying
No, we're not.
focus on what you're discovering about yourself, what you like,
Yes.
how you are
Yes.
perceiving a situation and embrace that. Embrace that exciting discovery.
Absolutely. And for us, this mantra came to life during that discovery, during embracing and having this attitude of, okay, so the more dates we go on and the more stories we share and experiences we have, we start noticing patterns, right? And you start realizing that, oh, this person made you feel this way. This person elicited this side of you, whether it be humorous conversations, whether it be intellectual conversations, whether it's just meeting up with somebody because you're both great foodies, and you're no longer looking to find the one. Kids, tick, done. Marriage, tick, done. Financial security, mostly, tick, done. And so you can go on this journey, experience this type of feeling,
Mm.
and know not about the end goal, as you mentioned, but really about the journey and the road that you will travel in order to get there and what you learn about yourself, right? Do you want to share some of your learnings with us?
Well, as some of our listeners will know,
Mm.
we've each come into this situation, this journey, this adventure with different preconceived ideas about ourselves and
Yes.
or how you should act on a date or how the man should act on the date or the things they should say or
Yes.
the things they should do. And I think for me, I've I think I've always known that I'm a pretty open person and I'm
Yes.
willing to accept to to test different ideas. And as we've
Mm.
said before, try on the different
Yes.
suit, right?
Yes. Trying
And
different.
so that whole idea has really taken hold with me where, we were just talking before we started recording that, when you have these dates and strange things happen, you have before that you discover that some things were red that you thought were a red line. Like for me, I would have said, prior to this whole dating experience, I'm not a smoker. I've never dated a smoker. My husband was
Yes.
not a smoker. I've never really been around smokers.
Mhm.
And so I would have said that in my mind, smoking was like a no way kind of
Yes.
thing. But
Yep.
surprisingly, I dated a guy for about 6, 7 weeks, and he
Yes.
was a smoker. But
Mm.
it wasn't a, it wasn't like one cigarette after another. He also rolled his own, so the smell was a bit different. He was very polite. He would step outside. He would only smoke half. Whatever he did, I learned that what I originally thought was going to be this big red line about what I would
Mm.
never accept was actually not that important in the scheme of things
No,
because it was
yeah,
more important to
absolutely.
discover his openness, his generosity, his politeness. Um, he wasn't a rude person, so all of these other things came into play
Mm.
versus that
Mm.
one thing. And so if you look at on the dating app, smoker, non-smoker, and you're like,
Yeah,
depends actually. I mean, that's one
absolutely.
thing that I've definitely learned is that my red lines might not be so red.
Yeah. One of the things that I've enjoyed about this discovery of myself is I don't like playing the conventional role all the time. After a few dates, after a few dates, and I say first dates in particular,
Yeah.
when you are sharing the same stories, asking the same questions of what do you do for a living? Where do you come from? Where have you traveled? What are your hobbies? I decided it's time to play around. And so I decided that the woman who had completed a relationship, who'd not laughed in so many years. I mean, really, really laughed from the belly. I decided to put on this suit of humor, and I decided that it would be time for me to try something new.
Mm.
And so, ladies, I decided that I would not be asking the regular run-of-the-mill question, the scripted questions of where do you
Mm.
work, where have you been, what's your hobbies, how many kids. In fact, on one date, I remember saying, we are not allowed to ask any of those questions.
Oh, good
Come up with
idea.
something, I know, come up with something interesting. I created, and I'm not saying people should lie, but I created a whole new story about myself. A woman traveling from Rwanda. I had a whole different accent. I had a whole different
No. Did you do that the whole
I did
date? Oh my God.
the entire date. And you know what? It was absolutely funny. And afterward, we laughed. And I was telling my dates, I said, actually, I'm from this place and I do this and I do that. And we
No, so
had
you
the,
told him
yeah,
after you played this whole
yeah,
part.
absolutely. We had a hysterical date ever. And it made me realize I didn't need to remain that specific woman, the specific
Mm.
wife, the specific professional. I can be whom I want.
Well,
We women are so bastard and so multi-layered, and really just removing the skins from that onion all the time exposes us to new levels of ourselves, right?
and you give yourself permission in that way when you create. I mean, that's kind of an
Yes,
extreme example, but
it
even
is.
if you, I liked your other idea too, where you just said, okay, here are the ground rules, and even just starting
Absolutely.
off with saying
Yes.
something like that makes it playful because you're like you acknowledge
Yes.
here we are on an awkward first date. So here are some
Exactly.
rules. We can't ask,
Yes.
I'm going to refer to you as Fred, and you can refer to me as
Yes.
Mary. And,
Absolutely.
and we can make up any story because, in a way, you could see, check their playfulness, check how seriously they take
Yes.
themselves, check if they can
Exactly.
kind of give up and go with the flow in that moment. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a super fun
Absolutely.
idea, actually. I love it.
It is a super fun idea. And of course, sometimes you need to shift the tone. Sometimes
Mhm.
it does need to be serious. And then also what we've done, which I think really embodies this mantra of it's about you, is the reflective questions after our dates, right?
Definitely.
Questions. Well, what type of behavior has this elicited within me? What was the tone of the evening? Was I happy? Did I laugh?
Yeah.
If laughter is important to you, which it is to me, did I laugh? Did I enjoy myself? Did I feel inspired by this person? I remember I had a date once and he was incredibly funny. He also knew how to, he was a father and of teenagers as well. And so we had that relativity about ourselves. We were able to relate in that way.
Mm,
But he also had much of a political background as well. And so we could have a political conversation. And that was really interesting. And so you discover, oh, actually, I like humor. That's really important to me. You
mm,
know, being around people who are intellectually minded, but not when that's one dimensional only.
right. Yeah.
And so start bringing these different elements of who you are to a date, and you start learning more about what it is that I like, what it is that I didn't like. What am I prepared to do, as an example? I remember something you told me. You said to me, Jackie, you've got to try on different suits. You've got to try on different suits.
Don't just go with your type.
Don't just exactly, don't just go with your type. Try something new. And I did. And we had a super time together. I learned so much about things I was unaware
Well,
of.
and that's kind of the it's about you and I think we don't even
Yes.
know, let me just say make a bold statement. We don't even really know who we are at this stage of our lives. So, as we've said, we're coming out of this divorce, this motherhood, this
Yes.
many years of marriage. We don't actually know our type. I would put forward to you.
Oh,
I would have said, it's got to be somebody who's super athletic and it's got to be somebody
yes.
who's tall and, dark and intellectual and adventurous. And it could be all of the, and definitely a non-smoker, right? Um,
Yes, absolutely.
and then I discover when I tried a different suit or where I was just open. And I said, okay,
Yes.
maybe he's not that tall or maybe he's not that athletic, but I like this other thing. That looks interesting. And I
Yes.
have gone to that point of just trying to click on people, match with people
Mm,
who are just have something that appeals to me. It could be their
yes.
looks, it could be something they wrote in their bio. It
Mm,
it could be a photo that I recognize from someplace and I want to ask them about. But I think that's super important to check because our type from 20 years ago is
it's very different.
unlikely to be our type now.
Absolutely. One of the things that I discovered about myself was I'm a lot more courageous than I realized. I'm a
Ah,
lot more courageous than I realized. And to me, that's really important. And so that is something I bring into my dating experiences as well. For yourself about the boundaries of smoking, I would never, ever in a million years have dated a smoker, but one of my Gabrielles did. And he was so considerate, like yours. He would leave the room, he would always buy the different flavors. And because he was so interesting, I forgot about that element of him. Where had I known that from the very beginning, I would have said, no, not for
yeah,
me.
absolutely. And you mentioned earlier this idea of the reflectiveness after the date. So I think we've seen it
Yes.
called the post-date eight.
The post date,
It's
yes,
a
by you.
nice rhyming term, but it doesn't have to be. It's basically the idea is having these questions that you ask yourself or that your dating
Yes,
buddy can ask you about the
yes,
date. And it could be things, like yeah, how did he make you feel? Or,
yeah.
did you feel comfortable? Did you feel attractive?
Mm, yeah.
Was he a gentleman?
Mm,
Was he generous? Was he respectful of the people around him, or was he
mm,
kind of, difficult in a restaurant situation?
yes.
Whatever. And I've also found that these questions, I mean, I think there were eight, I think that we had seen somewhere
Yeah.
or that we used. I've
Yes.
changed them all. And I usually have the other category where I can just write in, and there was something else, positive or negative, that just sort of stuck with me. Like I remember
Mhm.
with one date, um, the guy, was coming. He's from Los Angeles, And he
Yes.
had lived very much a life involved in kind of Hollywood and movie studios and a fair amount of money.
Okay.
And he was
Yeah.
really nice, interesting, had done, made me laugh, had done lots of travel. But I
Mm,
kind of, the thing that stuck with me after was
mm.
I thought, I don't know if our values and kind of our life experience is really a match. And I think, I don't know. We only had one date and it was lovely, but
Yeah.
we never met
Mm.
again. But that kind of just stuck with me like, I wonder if that could have worked. And he said a few other things
Yeah.
that sort of, it was like a little tinkly bell. It wasn't an alarm, but it was like a ding, ling,
Yes.
ling
Tick, tick.
that I kind of thought about later. And I thought, okay. And it's good to check yourself that way and
Yeah.
reflect beyond his height and his nice suit and, whether
Yeah.
he's fit or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other part of it's not about him, it's about you, is also when you're generally speaking, when you're married and everything is going really well, there's not a lot of reflection that takes place. And
Mhm.
there's not a lot of self-discovery that takes place.
Absolutely.
And now we live in a society whereby emotional intelligence is really, really important and is growing as a skill set, right?
Mm.
One of the things that I absolutely love about the reflection of It's About Me is the ability to ask yourself some of the easier questions that we've spoken about, but also some of the tougher questions. Your values, your boundaries, and are you able to exercise them? Are
Mm.
you able to exercise your values and your boundaries? I remember having an experience whereby I found myself in a position where initially I thought, oh, this could be a great physical match. And then after a while, I realized, no, actually, this is not for me. And so I quickly removed myself from
Situation.
yes, the situation. I quickly removed myself from the situation. And I remember at that point thinking, oh my God, this could go horribly wrong. Let's just leave really quickly.
Mm.
And me that, hey, you know what? Even in tight situations where you feel uncomfortable or you are not 100% certain about whether this is something you want or not, being able to exercise the ability of not just saying, oh, I don't think I should be here, but actually doing it and
Mm.
getting the hell out is
Yeah.
really important. And that's a big part of what it's meant for me about learning about yourself and then practicing those values and those boundaries. Yep,
And
big
as you
deal.
said, actually acting on them. It's one thing,
Yeah,
in a conversation with your girlfriend to say, I would never allow myself to X,
correct.
Y, Z.
Absolutely.
And
Yep.
and I can also think of a situation that, we don't really laugh about, where I
Mm.
found myself in a situation where I thought, what have I just let myself in for? It didn't
Yeah.
turn out to be dangerous, but I realized that
Mm.
it could have really, it had the potential with a different person.
Yeah.
It could have been a dangerous situation. And
Yeah.
I allowed myself to just be overcome by some hormonal alarms and
Excitement.
excitement. And I also had to extricate myself from that situation, which
Yeah.
worked. It was fine. No horrible consequences. But
Yes.
later I thought, no, that is not in my post. That is only a post date one. I just needed to have
Mm.
one conversation with myself and say, that is not how we will ever find ourselves again.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And for those who are curious about the dating world, who mentally would love to dip their toes back into the pond, but physically have not taken any moves yet. These are really important things to remember as well. What are your boundaries? What are your values? And are you willing to act on them? This is really important. I want to break that down again. Are you actually willing to act on them? Even when the situation or context you find yourself in is not favorable, right? The other thing I wanted to point out that we've discussed already is the idea of attraction, and specifically not attracting what you want, but attracting who you are. And
Mm.
during our dating journey, we've realized that, we say things like, and I'm talking purely about personality now. Oh, I'd love to be with a man who is generous in spirits, generous financially, who has a certain intellectual level, who is humorous. And we have this very, very long list. But I often ask myself the question, can I match that list?
Mm.
Can I be that for the person that I'm requesting? It's easy to say tall, dark, handsome, rich, because we've grown up with these lovely fairy tales. But princes save princesses.
Mm.
And so the question that we then have to ask ourselves is, if we attract who we are, then who do we wish to become?
Mm.
And what do we do in order to become that person? And that has been a journey for me and an exciting journey.
Well, and that's an excellent point back to the whole it's about you. So it's about you, it's about your boundaries, it's about what you're looking for, it's about discovering yourself. But it's also about doing the work to
Yes,
focus and enable yourself, to be that best person. And it's always
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
yet another journey we're all on. But if you want to attract a generous person, then you need to be generous. If you
You do.
want to attract a loving person, then you need to be loving.
You need to be loving. Yeah.
And I think that sometimes it's very easy to forget that part. I think it's such a good point you bring up. Is It's so easy to
Mm,
forget in our wanting, all these things that we've made a list and that we are so amazing, but we forget that we need to ante up with the same energy, the same qualities,
absolutely.
and of course that will make a much better match in the long run as well.
Absolutely. I would love to share one more story before we finish up, before we wrap up. I remember having a date, and the man that I was dating, Gabriel, was incredibly emotionally intelligent. And he had sent me a list of the requirements it is that he would like, the ideal person. And I remember reading this list thinking, oh my gosh, this man is incredibly intellectually and emotionally evolved, I would say. But as soon as I'd finished reading the list, I asked him the question, well, what is it that you bring? It's easy to say, this is what I want. I want this. I want that. Somebody who's emotionally evolved, somebody who's well spoken, somebody who is well traveled, somebody who's humorous, somebody who's this. And the list was quite an extensive one. But what do you bring? What match do you bring? What energy do you bring? What is your vibrational energy? What is your mindset in all of this? And I think that's a great part of what we're trying to bring across to our listener is that when we speak about it's not about him. What we focus really on is what is your mindset? What is your heart? What is your perception of yourself? And how do you present yourself?
Mm.
This is really important when you are seated in front of somebody in the dating world, because you then start attracting who you are. Like attracts like, isn't it?
Scary.
Super, super exciting. And that is a wrap for our show. So if any of this is that is super scary, but how even That is super scary, but incredibly exciting. And if any of this resonates with you, if you want to dip your toes into the dating world, or if you're on the journey already, but are desperately trying to find other women who wish to inspire and empower and support you, then do join us at Dating Dames Veto on socials, Instagram and Facebook, and our website. And you too could experience the joy of the sisterhood of dating dames. And remember to embrace this adventure, trust your instincts, and more importantly, it's not about him, it's all about you. Goodbye for now.
Bye.